Welcome to Without Regret, the podcast where stories of resilience and redemption take center stage. I'm your host, Tamara, and in each episode, we delve into the lives of individuals who have faced adversity head on and emerged stronger on the other side. In this episode, we continue the conversation with Michelle Shekhinah in part 2 of her story, where she shares some very helpful, practical, and valuable tips for planning your escape from an abuser. If you haven't listened to part 1, I recommend you listen to that first. This is Without Regret. Let's dive right in.
And, I've worked really hard on getting physically strong for myself, for my kids, all of that, in addition to the emotional. And I think when we have the foundation of being physically strong, we're really able mentally more so to handle the stuff that comes at us. So I find that that's really, really important.
So I have a few questions.
Go for it.
If you're ready for them.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to go back to the early years of your marriage and talk about, it sounds, obviously there were red flags from the very beginning when we talk about him 2 months in wanting you to get married immediately. And good for you for standing your ground and holding him off for a year. But and you mentioned, him going to Las Vegas and stuff. Do you think this is something that, even though you weren't necessarily being directly affected by it at the time, do you think this is something that a lifestyle he was living the whole time?
Absolutely. He would tell me that.
And then when you came in and said, I want to live life to the fullest, he took that to mean that, all right, let's go. It's on. She's in this with me.
It's on. Exactly. That's exactly it. And you put that really well, because he told me in the end, and, again, I got all these confessions, and it was like, oh yeah, I was getting massages, with the happy endings. So yeah, I think that he was definitely doing this. I mean, apparently he was doing drugs in college. He was doing drugs at my wedding. I've heard.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. And
how is he not in jail?
I listen, I keep my mouth quiet because I just need to move on, and my goal has been to make sure that my kids are okay.
Right.
That I can keep a roof over my head, that I could feed my kids if need be, well, my little one, obviously, to make sure that my kids are good emotionally, physically, and now my daughter's going to college, academically. And that was my goal for the last 5.5 years. It was my goal for their whole lives, for the last 25 years. But obviously in the last 5 years, I had to keep myself straight, and it was not easy. I stay out of it because I don't want my family to wake up and me not be here. I don't want to get stopped at a traffic light and them saying, oh, I need to look in your car, and there's something in my car, or go get drug tests. I mean, I'm scared to death of that. Let's be honest. I'm going to put it out there in the public. And I've told all of my doctors, and the people that really would be behind me in a court of law, that if something happens to me, if there's stuff in my system, I didn't put it there. And, I only take what's necessary. And, anyone who knows me knows that that's true. But it's a scary place to be. That takes the story that we're telling to a different level.
Yeah.
But that's the reality I lived. And I still live. So I kind of do my own thing. I get through the day, and my goal is to help and heal other people. We've been struggling financially because he's been holding back, living his life all grand. And it's all documented with pictures and all of that. And my daughter and I have been struggling. We couldn't put food on the table.
Wow.
And I've done whatever I could. And luckily, there are organizations out there for everybody. You don't have to have been abused. You don't have to be a certain demographic. You don't have to be a certain religion. There's financial help out there. There are food banks. There are clothing banks. And I used to be the person that would donate everywhere. And I am now that person that gets donated to. And I will tell you, it is the most humbling, beautiful experience that I've had. It was really hard the first time I went there. But I was so loved and hugged and everything that I needed, because I was so scared. But I will say that I've had to come out of this thinking I survived for a reason.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If I had stayed a week longer, if I had stayed 3 days, I would not be here. There's no way. I know that in my heart of hearts. I wouldn't be
What
here.
what was that final straw that made you just leave? Because and
Mm-mm.
had you tried to leave before unsuccessfully,
Mm-mm.
or
No.
that you
Well,
just
so 2 years before I actually left, I talked to my daughter about it, and because she saw it, and that was my decision of like, I got to get out of this. She can't be around that. I don't want her to know that that's okay, and it's not okay.
Mhm,
But it took me 2 years because this is what they do: three
mhm,
days on, 4 day off. 3 days they're nice, 4 days they're not. So it took me a good 2 years because I was utterly confused. I had no money of my own. My family
mhm.
was isolated. These people were still like, and they were around, they were all around. We had different groups all around, not mentioning names, and it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
So it was like a circle that I couldn't even get out of until I think I realized that they wanted me out because I was too
They
good.
wanted you out?
Yeah, oh yeah, and him included because I was looking for help from him. So what happened was I was trying to tell my girlfriends or whatever what was going on, and they would ignore it because if it wasn't fun or sexy, it wasn't part of the plan, it wasn't part of the party. um, if we broke up, then what happens with the group, what happens with the supply, what happens with what he brings to the table.
So he didn't
So
fight you leaving?
he did,
Okay.
but for him, it wasn't about fighting me leaving. It was about making sure I didn't go anywhere. So I went to the police one day after, because I woke up when I was at the safe house. I woke up every morning before the sun came up and I went to where my daughter was. And I woke up for her freshman year of school, made sure she was dressed. I made her lunch at the other house. I didn't touch any food, any water, anything. I took she and her friend to school, and then I'd pick her up for school and get her a snack and do homework. I was that mom, even though I was living somewhere else.
Mm.
And I'll tell you, I can't even like that to me is like worse than anything, thinking about that. Having to leave, having to go there in the dark, scared to death, having to leave my kids. So what I was saying to you is that when I did go, I went to the police station because they were patrolling the traffic of the school. And there was one day where it was really bad. And, you could see that they were frustrated. So I went and I brought cookies. I went to the store and I bought cookies and not knowing that he had a tracker in my car. And he came after me that night. You went to the police and, you want to get me arrested and blah, blah, blah. And I did, in fact, ask them what to do. It was scary. It was like something out of a movie. I mean, the more I talk about it, it's like I realize, like, oh my God, like I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Because
You
in
should
my
write a book
head, I am
if you're
actually.
not
I'm writing.
already. Yeah.
I'm writing too. My website is from the floor to the door.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally went from the floor to the door in so many ways. I was on the floor. The last month, I was on a twin mattress in an extra bedroom in the back of the house. And like when he found out that I filed for divorce and went public, he freaked out because he's all about image, as
Mm-hmm.
most of them are in
Yeah.
that state.
Mm-hmm.
He punched in the door and started screaming. And my little one, she's sleeping next to the room, and my best friend, she came and she's like, "Why are you sleeping? You're sleeping in a closet. What is this?" And I did that for a month before I left, because I was afraid to be in the same bed with him, have him near me, or everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, or when we were with friends, I was put on the floor, or there were times when my behavior again was off, and I own some of that. I really do. Um, and he again would take the pictures. He'd say, "Do this," and I would do it. Or I'd end up sick on the floor. I'd pretend to be sick, or I'd pass out, or I'd pretend to pass out so no one would come near me. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I pretended to be sleeping.
At
And
what point did you realize that this was considered trafficking? Because I'm
when,
sure for listening to my previous podcast,
yeah,
I was
yeah,
obviously very confused what trafficking was
yeah, most people are.
myself. So yeah, when did you realize that?
It's still a hard pill to swallow, so to speak. I'll tell you. So I have a friend of mine. since we were teenagers, a male best friend. And when I got into my own apartment and my daughter wasn't here, what I did was I gathered all the people I trusted, my family, my siblings, family friends I've known since we were little, friends that I've known since I was little. A lot of my friends from like elementary, middle, and high school, I knew I could trust a lot of them. Some of those people are his friends now, believe it or not. Because again, there's a common denominator there. And that's fine. I block everyone. So I was talking to my friend and telling him what was going on. And it was the first time I'd really told somebody that knew me, and just out loud. And he's like, Michelle, you were trafficked. He trafficked you. It's like, what do you mean? What does that mean? And this is again 2019. And he's like, he pimped you out. And for me, I'm like, and he said it so casually, and I'm thinking, well, there's no money exchange. Again, I'm like logically trying to think about this. And of course, we know, and thank God there's so much awareness. Thank God now. Because people don't realize there are so many faces of what it looks like, what trafficking or prostitution looks like. There are so many faces. I don't know what his exchange was. I think it was just his own deviance getting the thrills out. A lot of people have told me he put me in the situations that he wanted to be in. There's that. So as far as trafficking, it all looks different in every scenario.
Okay, so at this point, my computer had died. It just died right at that point in the podcast recording. And we are now 2 months later. So we're going to finish the story, which we were pretty much to the end of her story anyway. But then we can also find out what she's been up to since and how life has been since. And I think she's got some positive things to tell us. So I'm really excited to get Michelle back on here right now. Hi, welcome back. I think it's been 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I was like, holy crap, that went by really fast.
Always.
I'm so glad we were able to get to reconnect and finish up this episode, because I was like so mad when my computer just like died. It just literally just turned off. And I was like,
that happened to me the other day in court. So
oh no.
So that's kind of interesting, but that's okay. I wasn't representing myself. But that, we can even put that as part of the story later on. But yes, it does happen sometimes at the most inopportune times.
Yes. So we left off with you were in your own apartment, and you had told a friend what was going on, and he let you know that you were trafficked.
Correct.
And
right.
So you were coming to terms with that at this point. So let's pick up from there. And I guess I want to know, like, what did you do once you realized what was really going on?
It's still, honestly, 4 years later, something really hard to accept. And, I kind of have to make the distinction of, it's hard to accept because these were people that I loved. These are people that I considered my family, my romantic partner, all of that. And then the other side of it is, oh my God, that really happened to me. And I'm not, I was the suburban mom. I was the PTA president. I was, the person that went into the room and did the kids' school parties for everybody who was working, and, all of that. And yet this still went on. And the fact that I was kind of clueless as to what it really meant. But I have done a lot of work since then, as you can imagine, and educated myself, because I have found that education really helps the healing process. When you get out of the emotional and into the intellectual, where you can understand that it wasn't you and it wasn't your choice. Even though that was told to me, I chose this. This was supposed to help our relationship. You wanted it. And that was not the case. And no one would choose that. So I've educated myself in the last few years emotionally. I think that they say it takes a lifetime, and it really does. I mean, there are great moments. There are moments where, I was crying an hour ago because my situation has changed. I'm an empty nester now, which, to all the moms out there that are empty nesters, I mean, I think we cry when we we make breakfast, or we do the laundry, we find one of their socks, and that's a bittersweet moment too, in another episode. But it lends itself to, oh my gosh, now what do I do?
Yeah.
So, because when we're healing and we're out of the situation, a lot of the times it's like, okay, we have choices for the first time in our life.
And that can be
Scary.
overwhelming if you're.
It's extremely overwhelming. And everyone's like, oh, it's exciting and you can do whatever you want. But
Yeah.
to someone who's been through what I've been through in any degree of domestic violence or coercion or any of that, any sort of control from another person, and you're out of it, like, okay, now what do I do?
Yeah.
And it's very daunting, I should say. Um, I realized that in this case, it's the little things that matter, truly. Waking up at the certain time, having a routine, having your coffee the same way, whatever it is, and then, going for a walk, getting outside, and then slowly making little adjustments to where you become part of the world. Because I know for myself and for so many people, we tend to isolate ourselves. And that's where the whole cocooning of a caterpillar comes in. And I really understand that. And I understand that more now as having been a mother for the last 25 years and not having those children under my roof. So I recommend that to everyone is taking small moments and enjoying those before saying, okay, now I'm ready to change my entire life. Unless you can do that, and God bless.
Yeah. Are you ready to come out
just,
of the cocoon yet?
yes and no. I've taken a few steps back because I am part of that sandwich generation of I have children that are older now that, you still have to kind of monitor them, especially because my kids have issues. So I
Right.
have to make sure they're okay, even in their adulthood. My son still calls me and says, hey, mom, remind me what I'm allergic to when he's at the doctor. And he's in his 20s. I mean,
Yeah.
and, my daughter's in school and she has issues with, let's say, paying for a class or, what are we going to do for housing? And, that's something that I have to monitor. And on the flip side of it, I have two elderly parents who don't want to consider themselves elderly, which is really even more challenging. But they have physical challenges. And I've had to now step back into the role of being under their roof where I'm at right now because I didn't want to I didn't want to make my next move before I made sure that number one, they were okay. And that I didn't just throw myself out into the world because I want to do it really succinctly and do my research before. Because, it's one of those things where you can go and live anywhere, but
Yeah.
I don't want to make the mistake of, let's say, signing a lease and being locked into something, or choosing this job and not loving it, but yet a house next to it. So there's a lot of factors into going there. But I figured I went into my caregiver role as usual, my healthcare caregiver role, and said, well, let me make sure my parents are okay.
Do you ever feel like you can't trust your own judgment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt. There's no doubt about that, which is why I write a lot. And of course, I'm in one-on-one therapy, and then I now started a group therapy with. It's at a university, and it's a trauma program. And the reason why I love it is because it's not like I always thought it would be like something you see in the movies where everyone sits and drinks coffee and we talk about our stuff and we cry. And that doesn't happen. You know, there might be some tears, usually by me, because I cried everything, good and bad. And
I don't know if you cried. I don't remember you crying, but anyway.
Probably not. But I just, you know, again, because that's me getting out of my emotional into the intellectual when I talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
So the group therapy, what we're learning about is DBT, and it's behavioral therapy, which is all about mindfulness. And so what we do is, you know, we get worksheets and we go through the intellectual, the logical part of mindfulness, the reason behind it, skills to use, you know, what kinds of things we want to, let's say, get through in order to do this. And so that's been really helpful for me as far as making decisions. Like you said, you had asked me, and in order, and I take notes because I'm a perpetual nerd, and it really is part of my own therapy. And so when I do make a choice, I reference back to those things I've written when I'm in a better place before I do make a decision.
Okay.
And
aligning with what you truly want,
yeah,
and just spur of the moment,
right,
in the moment type thing.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I found it very interesting because we went through the word crisis last week. And at the time we're recording this, there is a crisis going on in our world right now. And it's very heartbreaking. And it was ironic to me that I always thought of crisis on a global scale. The pandemic was a crisis. What's happening in the Middle East is a crisis. But then everyone else said personal crises. And I never looked at myself as having a crisis. But once I said to someone, I can't talk right now. I'm having a crisis. And we, you know, we broke it down and took notes on what that meant and how to get through that. And I thought, wow, that's pretty powerful. Because for someone like me, who's always the strong one, who always, you know, gets through it, who everyone relies on, I never thought of myself as having a crisis.
Right.
And that was really eye-opening for me. And, you know, my ego had to get out of the way to be able to say that and to accept that. I know. To
Yeah.
accept that.
I feel all of this. Like, I've not been through anything close to what you've been through, but so I'm sure it's not to the level of what you feel, but everything you're saying totally resonates with me.
Right. And well, I say that, you know, I mean, life is a trauma, which is a number line. Any trauma is that, you know, starts at 0 and it goes to 1, 2, 3, just like a math number line we learned in elementary school, if they're still teaching that. And it goes all the way to infinity. And you could be anywhere on that number line. And, you know, the skill sets that you need to have to get through, because perception is reality. Your 5, you know, to my, let's say, 1,005 might feel the same in your body and to yourself as mine does. It doesn't matter what the details are. It's how that person feels. And the skill set is the same. I mean, I'm sitting in my group therapy and everyone has different experiences. And quite frankly, I'm the oldest one in the group. And I've been through, like, some of these people could be my children because it is in the university level. And of course, it's hard for me not to mother them, as my child says. Don't mother the people that you're in group therapy with, because she knows me. But the point is that all of these things are what we can all learn to get through anything we're going through. And, you know, I could sit here and I can sit here and say that easily, but again, like an hour ago, I might have been in a crisis and, you know, might have done some crazy thought processes or texts or whatever it is. And now that I'm thinking about it, I can be like, oh, right. So I'm still learning also.
Yeah. Well, how do you pull yourself out of that when you get into that crisis mode? What do you have tools that you've learned to?
I do. So breathing is the basics.
Okay.
Because we could be driving, we could be at a meeting, we could be recording a podcast on either side. It could be in an airplane, anything. And breathing is the one thing that we can control one way or the other. And, you know, there are many things that we could do, the box breathing, the 4-8, you know, all of that. It could be holding your breath for a minute if you feel like your heart rate is just too high. It could be putting your hand on your abdomen, your hand on your heart, any of that, and that helps to control. And then I love affirmations and or mantras. Um, I'm a big I am person. I have the I am app on my watch and my phone, and every few hours it throws one out there for me.
Oh, that's
You
nice.
know,
I didn't know that was a
and
thing.
yeah, it is a thing. I know. I've taught a lot of people that. I should be one of their
Yeah, you
salespeople.
should.
But what it is, anything that works for me, I will share
Yeah.
because, I've been on that rock bottom, hence, from the floor to the door.
hmm
So what it does is it breaks the pattern, that cycle, because you're in a crisis,
hmm
for two reasons, depending on your experience. For me, it's in my body. I don't have to have the thought to have the physical reaction. It's a little bit different because I'm someone who has my nervous system it's in repair. It's in need of repair because of those things that happened to me. As far as like my somatics, I have to really control that. And that's where breathing comes in. But for some people, it's a thought process. It could be, oh my gosh, seeing my daughter sock in the laundry and thinking, I haven't heard from her in a few days. She doesn't love me. I'm not a great mom. But the things that we all say to each other or to
Yeah.
ourselves.
Or to ourselves. Yeah.
And right to ourselves. And that can turn into like some kind of crazy crisis, but it should be validated. It's say, okay, this is where I'm at, if you can, breathing and then breaking that pattern. And that's where the I am does. Music is huge. Podcast, I always have my AirPods in, or they're attached to me. Everyone who knows me knows I come with them, as well as with my dogs. They seem to be my shadows these days. And that is, animals for me does it. Kids and animals, they'll break your pattern in 2 seconds flat.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
Right. And they demand it, which is almost good because you can't
Yeah.
be in a crisis when your dog has to go outside or wants to be fed or your child has to, use the bathroom or wants to be fed.
True.
Petting, right. Petting an animal, getting that kinesthetic feel of like, okay, and then breathing
I'm
into
petting
that.
my dog right now as
Right.
we're
I
doing
see
this.
that. I
That,
see it. Right.
that's
And I'm
what's
doing
going
the
on here.
same. Right. Mine's on the lap and, kind of giving them love and energy and receiving it back, and it shifts your mind and your energy and your physiology. And that's number one. Going outside and taking a breath and looking up at the sky and touching a leaf, it brings you back, it grounds you. If you have to or can do it barefoot, ground yourself in the earth. I think that's
Right.
really also brilliant. um for me,
But is
doing
there
I like
something
to.
to be said for like I one of the patterns I've
Hmm.
actually right before I was headed to Texas,
Hmm.
I was getting a message from all over the place that you have to
Hmm.
feel your feelings.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean,
So like
yeah, you can't.
obviously you can't just stop in the middle of
No. Mm-mm.
whatever and feel those feelings. So you need a
Right.
way to be able to bring yourself back to the present in those moments, but then you also have to take
Correct.
the time to feel the feelings.
Right. If you're going through a crisis, absolutely feel the feelings. I
Yeah.
mean, if you can't feel the feelings at that moment, you have to put it off or what have you. That's what those modalities are for. But if you have to feel them, you sit there and you
Yeah.
feel it and you let it out,
You
however
let
you
it
have to
out.
let it out.
Exactly.
You let
Yeah.
it out. I think too many people try and not let it out.
Yeah.
And, we do get physically sick or we take it
Yeah.
out on others or whatever the case may be. We take it out on ourselves. I went through my own self harm phase, which was so on an intellectual basis, so foreign to me because I knew better, but that was at the time something that was happening. Um, that is no longer an issue. It was very brief, but you have to feel and not be afraid to.
hmm
And I do like writing
hmm
because writing gets it out of your physical body and onto paper, which helps with that energy that we feel. And you get out what you're feeling, and then you can also have it to look back on, which is a great thing too.
Right. And kind of
Um,
look to see how
so
far you've come.
right, to see how far you've come, or if you need to be reminded that hey, I did go through this and I'm still here.
Yeah.
I went through it, I'm still
Right.
here. or looking back and thinking, you know what, maybe I was wrong in this situation, or maybe I was right in this situation. Either one of
Right.
those.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those are ways to do that.
So what have you been up to since we last talked? I think you talked a little bit about it with you said
Yeah.
the group thing. Is that from the Floor to the Door
Mm-hmm.
program, or is that part of it?
So that's something that actually I'm doing myself personally, because I'm learning as much as I'm healing and doing for others. Because I'm the type of person that I'll do for everybody else and be like, I'm okay, I can handle it. And I usually can.
Mhm.
But I've learned that, again, having launched my youngest to school and being on my own, and everyone says, okay, now the time is for you. And I have to realize that, as much as I put out, I have to get back. And I'm actually going back to school myself, back to college in January, to shift gears into the nonprofit sector and helping other people in a professional way, as far as going into a larger organization, because I've done it on my own as
Mhm.
far as the programs that I've done, as well as the ones I've been involved in on a volunteer basis. But now I'm looking on a much larger scale.
Right.
So I'm doing that, and because I want to learn, I find myself researching and educating myself for hours on end. And I was like, you know what? Let me go back to school and get a degree, another one, another few letters behind my name or after my name, and get paid for it, for goodness sakes, because I am a single mother who left a situation with nothing.
Right.
And there's a lot of financial abuse now that I'm dealing
Mhm.
with. And that is the case, hence my, having to go to court where my computer died. I mean, I was in the middle of a courtroom and it died out because I need a new computer, little things.
Yeah.
But, so I have to really look at that. So I've been trying to tie in what I've gone through, how I've healed, what interests me, and making that, like I say, the scales tipping slowly and making that shift into this arena. And it's very common. It's very, very common. And so I'm doing that. I'm really looking forward to that, because I've also be with people that are very like-minded. And
Mhm.
that's really important, because I think that those of us that have gone through any sort of trauma, abuse, what have you, um, there's a bit of isolation, whether we choose to isolate ourselves or feel it, or it actually is reality, because we think nobody can really understand. And I'll be quite frank, with what I went through, nobody can understand. And if people are trying to give me advice or move on, or you
Mhm.
can't look back, and they don't quite get it, and I understand now that they don't. At first I would be, well, how can you tell me that you don't you don't get it, you don't, and they never
Mhm.
will, no matter how much I say that. It's
And
I
thank God they never
understand.
will, right?
Exactly. And I
You
say
know.
that, and right. And I do say that. And
Yeah.
even to, I come from a large family with lots of siblings and what have you, and cousins and all of that. And I wouldn't wish anything that I went through on anyone.
Mhm.
And they all say that we wouldn't have survived what you did.
Yeah.
And, and they're also the ones saying you can't look back on your past and you have to move forward. And I love that they love me enough to try and say that, yet they also don't get that I am that person that wants to face it. I want to
Right.
sit in that flashback, face it, walk through that muck, stand in it for a while, analyze it, because that's what I do, and then move on.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because what happens is I'm almost desensitizing myself. I've done EMDR, the eye movement desensitize, desensitizing, sorry, and that's been great, um, unless it's done consistently. And I found in person, for me, because mine wasn't in person,
Mhm.
um, it's I can almost do it myself. And so I've been doing that. I've helped other people with it, um, and not something I'm certified on, but I'm able to help someone with that. Um, and one thing I'm going to become certified on, actually, in the schooling. But sitting in through it, like you said, feeling your feelings, it
Mhm.
helps you. that level of 0 to 10, you know, what's that scale level? You can bring yourself down. And sometimes it is sitting in, and I always say sitting in a safe spot, whether that's in your car, in your closet, in your bedroom with a locked door. You have to feel safe, first of all, first and foremost. No one can hear you because there might be cries and screams and lots of tears. Writing through it is so important. And I find that so many of us have written books. I mean, I'm in the process of writing 2 now. And I think that writing has healed so many people, which is why there are so many of us out there with books and our different versions of them, and which I think is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I will say the beautiful thing is there's not a competition of my trauma is worse than yours, which, you know, you really have to be careful about. And I spoke at a domestic violence symposium, a couple of them the last month. And I said, you know, we talked about support, and the challenge with support is for someone who's gone through trauma and hasn't healed completely themselves, they'll try and take over, for lack of a better word, the conversation and be like, well, we've all gone through our own trauma and we just have to get through it. Okay, well, number one, it sounds like you haven't gotten through it necessarily. And then number two, because you didn't give me space really to talk. And number two is, you know, that was your story. This is mine. And, you know, I do a lot of love and blessings from afar and here. I believe in the power of forgiveness, and everyone you hope is doing the best that they can with the information that they have. Meaning that I think everyone's trying to get through their day. But when you're going to look for support, you really have to try and find someone who's not going to compare your trauma versus theirs and not give you the space. And that's a really important factor, because otherwise we will all walk through this life feeling unseen and unheard. And that's where more of that isolation comes. It's like, why do I even bother? I'm just going to sit in my room.
Right.
Because now it's like, I'm going to sit in my room and have my dog right? And watch TV and drown myself out. And that's one of the worst things we can do for long periods of time. I think a lot of times that is necessary. That's the cocooning process. But to sit there and feel sorry for ourselves, it can happen as long as there's a plan of action eventually. And so that I find is really important.
Yeah. So many common themes with a lot of the people that I've talked to with trauma, with the feel the feelings, do the breathing, writing. It's huge.
Yep.
Yeah,
it
for
is.
Sure.
It's all huge. And then talking. I mean, this obviously is very healing on both sides.
Yeah.
Actually,
I think it's just like writing, right? It's letting it out. It's not, all of it is about releasing the thoughts and the feelings and getting them out of the body and out of the mind.
Correct. Yeah. And I consider it a triple win, because of course you have your audience, you know, your wonderful audience who gets to hear all of the different versions of what we've all been through. So, you know, they're not alone. I mean, in any regard, they're not alone, because so many, even someone who's been through, let's say, the sex trafficking like I have, their version could be completely different than mine. Unfortunately, I knew all my perpetrators. I knew everyone.
A lot of people do.
Yeah, they do. And
well, they know, maybe not know they're all of them, but at least for sure the one that's, you know,
the one that's doing it,
that's doing the trafficking.
Exactly. So I knew all of them though. And the one that did traffic me was the one I was the most in love with and dedicated my life to. And you know, that also can be really just the lack of the word, it's the betrayal is so heavy in that regard. And that's a whole separate piece, I feel like, as far as relationship goes. because so many of us can heal and help and move on and be successful in whatever that means to us. But when it comes to a relationship, oh boy, that's a whole different animal. I mean, honestly, it really is, because I've tried being in a relationship before. And for one, there's a lot of betrayal I have found. Um, and I don't know what's going on out there today in that crazy world of dating. But it's scary. Talk about daunting. It really is. And I think that's because there's so many people walking around that are hurt and not
Especially at this
healing,
age, right?
especially at this age. And I'm in
Yeah.
my 50s. And
Yeah.
and like the guys are like, oh, I don't need therapy, or,
Yeah.
I'm so
I've
busy working
never
on my
married, no
business.
kids, but there's nothing
Right,
wrong with
right.
me.
Exactly, right. Or exactly. Or,
I've been
they've
married three
gone
times, but
from
there's nothing wrong with me.
right, right, or gone through women after women and never have been
Mhm.
alone, and
Yes.
all of that, and right, and maybe had some childhood stuff, like, oh, I'm fine with my childhood, nothing's wrong with me, but yet you've betrayed all these women one after the other. And there's an issue there. Oh, but no, I'm good. And then there are these people that, these men that work so much so on their business or their profession, and I respect that. I think that's wonderful. But working on your business and your profession is not going to heal your mind and your heart. And I've had to accept situations of people in my life that I love from afar, because I walk around with an open heart, which is a little scary, but
Mhm.
it's just how I was built, and it's how I was made and how I am built, I should say. And I'm not going to apologize for that, but I'm going to be a little smarter going
Right.
forward. I am. And the conversations are going to start, they're looking different a little bit. And even my own reaction is sometimes it's very, it's strong and intense on the opposite side of where I was before. No one's going to tell me what to do. No one's going to tell me what to think. And,
Mhm.
we go through that as women, I think, especially, when we've been hurt, those that have been hurt in an nth degree, is that we're not going to let anyone else hurt us again.
Right.
And that's also a mistake.
Yeah.
That's also a mistake.
That's a wall.
So
Yeah.
it is a wall. It's a wall, and it's ironclad, and it's as high up as the one on the Game of Thrones. I mean, listen, I did say I was a little bit of a nerd, so
I watched it all too. I'm right
right.
there.
I'm trying to remember, what was that? What was it? Not the Tower. What was it called? That's another movie, another show I watched. I don't
Oh,
remember.
I haven't
Anyway,
watched that one yet.
I know it's been so long, but anyway, so that's what came in my head. It's that high,
Yeah.
and there's no way to climb it. And so yeah, so me personally, I'm working on that. I'm really working on that aspect of it, and the trust part. Trusting is huge. That's
Yeah.
a tough one. I
Yeah.
mean,
It's
let's
tough.
be honest. I mean, I can heal as much as I want, and again, from my story, I was hurt by a lot of men that I thought were brothers and women that I thought were like sisters,
Hmm.
and they brought me into a world of, let's be friends. You're new. We'll include you in the group, because I had a few groups that I was friends
Hmm.
with this person, and it was all wonderful in the beginning. But I didn't know that there was an agenda. I didn't know that.
Do you ever wonder if those women were also being trafficked? Or I mean, because I'm sure to
No.
them, you looked like a willing participant too, right?
Yes and no,
Okay.
because the person I was with clearly gave me away. Clearly came to, let's say, a party with the narcotics in one pocket and myself in the other.
Yeah.
And no, no was not an option for me. The
Right.
more I said no, the more he would push back, or the emotional abuse, um, the, I don't want to say ghosting because we were together, but the not speaking to me for a few days would happen. Whatever it wasn't an option. And it really wasn't an option for anyone in the room to say no with him, I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone, exactly. So everyone's behavior changed. And I could even feel my own behavior change. I could see it because of what was in me. And, there were drinks being passed just like any other party, but I never made my own drinks. And I never suspected anyone would put anything in the drink because I don't come from that. So I don't know from that.
Right.
And I'm more aware now. And I've educated myself now. And ironically, I would tell my children, be careful when you go out. But here it is. I'm at someone's house. And again, all these different friends. And I don't think to myself, this could happen to me because I thought I was in a safe space, But when you're in houses where people close the doors or lock the doors or whatever it is, that's not safe. That's not normal.
Right.
And, or in the back of a club where the person knows the owner and security's at the door, so you can't get out. That's not a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think that those women, to answer your question, were at all. They were very different from me. They'd all been friends for years. This is one group in particular. They'd all been friends for years. I was the outsider. So, you really have to be careful of who you talk to, who you're saying, and where that person that you're holding their hand, where they're directing you. And I would always advise people to say, just go with your instinct, no matter what. Because even if you're wrong, you're wrong. Yeah. And if your instinct says I'm not safe, then I don't find that you'll ever change that. Because even if you are incorrect, maybe the situation of this person you lose out on, but if you don't feel safe, it's okay. You'll find somebody else, or you'll find another situation or another event to go to that does feel safe.
So, I think I have three closing questions.
Sure.
But those could always lead to more. So, the first question would be, what would be your top 3 or 5 things that you would want someone to know who could potentially be in a situation that you're in? What would you want them to, what would you say to them to open their eyes to, what advice, I guess, would you have for them?
If your body is telling you it's not right, it's not right.
Okay.
I'm gonna do an outline form. So that's number 1. A on that would be, if you're in a situation where there are cocktails, make your own.
Okay.
Watch the person making them. Cover it, because it's easy and it's a gateway, and it happens, and there's a reason why we educate our teenagers now.
Yeah.
My daughter worked with Planned Parenthood, and we've worked with different groups of teenagers, LGBTQ community, women distress, and it's one thing that we have to preach now, and it's crazy, but it's true. If you feel off about a certain person, like I said, or a certain place, leave, walk away.
But what if you can't? I mean, could you have walked away if you wanted to in those moments, like realistically?
Okay, so that would be number 2. So if you know, but I also didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
Here's what I do know now. Start putting stuff in your car. I mean, I'm the kind that has like 5 jackets and 6 pairs of shoes for whatever I need, pretty much like my grandmother used to. Take pictures of everything, take screenshots of everything. Any text that doesn't feel right, any document, any photos. Don't put yourself in compromising positions where there's a camera, where there's a phone, because that happened to me. People have pictures of me that should not have pictures of me. And, I'm going to run that narrative. I was put in situations that were non-consensual. If they were consensual, it's because I was not in my right mind at all. And I was coerced a lot. And, that middle school girl of insecure person would say, oh, they want to be friends with me. What am I have to do to keep them to be friends with me?
Yeah.
So let's not people please. It's enough of all of us doing that, especially after a certain age. But going back to answer your question, I mean, preparation is key. We food prep these days. We make the kids lunches the day before. let's prepare ourselves. If we feel like we're in a dangerous situation, we have first aid kits for a reason. Put stuff in your car, money for sure. If you go to the grocery store, you can get extra money out, do it. If the person doesn't see their receipt, buy gift cards. Buy gift cards for quote unquote a friend who's having a birthday.
Wow,
for your kid's friend who's having a birth for your kid's friend who's having a birthday, quote unquote.
So you're kind of answering my second question now, which was going to be, well, how would you tell somebody to get out? How would you help them figure out how to get out of the situation? That's where you're going now.
So that's where I'm going now. And start getting the resources. There's a lot of financial resources out there that people don't know about.
Okay.
Women Distress will help. There's one that's called Jewish Family Services that I've worked with, and they take over anyone. It doesn't matter. There's lots of Christian Catholic ones. I mean, it doesn't matter what religion you are. If you need help, there's help out there. There are food banks out there everywhere now since COVID, especially.
Yeah.
So don't worry about being fed. You'll get fed.
Okay.
You need shelter. You'll find shelter. There are shelters out there for women and men now. And if there aren't male shelters, Women in Distress and those organizations now put men up in hotels if they need to. Because this does happen to men as well.
Yeah.
But there are places to go. Okay. There's the National Coalition for Women for Domestic Violence. There's lots of things. Start looking on Facebook. If you have to, create a separate Facebook page. Create it, make it look fake. Don't just put a blank picture with a name, make a different name. And I'm not someone who does that because I'm as honest as they could be. But if you do that, you'll be able to do your research.
Right.
A lot of these websites have escape buttons where you just push a button and it sends you to some whatever random website.
Yeah.
And again, take pictures, put a photo vault in your phone. I had to learn all these skills. It's like,
and learn how to delete your search history.
Absolutely. Yeah. And your cache and all that. And, it's like you're about to climb a mountain and you don't just go. You have to get your, your backpack ready, right. You have to prepare. So, and these are really important preparations and skills. But I will say that I have found that there are organizations and individual people that will help you. Yeah. Be careful about who you tell what to, because my best friends are still friends with him. Yeah. I did not know that I was telling, the enemy everything.
Right.
And there was a tracker on my car. If you need to make a phone call, there are payphones somewhere out there. You might be able to find one. It might be an old gas station or something like that. I don't know, but I did.
Well, even if it's an old gas station, you might be able to get a burner phone.
A burner phone. So
a prepaid phone.
Right.
Yeah.
A prepaid phone or prepaid card. And I did do that. I actually had to have two of them. And then I found out he had found out about them and started playing a game with me with his phone and calling me as if he was other people. And that was a whole nother mess. So yeah, you can get a burner phone for sure. The phone cards, that sort of thing. I'm just, I'm trying to think. So again, like if you have someone, I don't know, I have friends that I've known since childhood that I would do anything for. And those women, even some of the male friends, I trust implicitly. And there's no question about it. Family members that are distant, you can send things to them. You can send, let's say, documents, those, gift cards, if you get any, put yourself out there where you're telling people, again, someone that in your heart of hearts, not someone that you've gossiped with, not someone who's ever told you a bad story about someone else, because that's not someone you can trust.
Oh, good point.
That's not that. If someone has told you stuff about another woman or another human being, that's not someone. If anyone talks badly about someone, don't trust them.
Right.
Don't trust them. If it's on once in a while or something, or it's really bad about work, maybe to vent. But if it's on a regular basis, and we all know that person, they're fun sometimes, but we know that they're not your person.
Right.
Not if you're going through anything. But if you have someone, let's say, that's far away in another country, even if you can send them what you will need maybe later on, then do that.
Okay.
Then do that. I mean, use cash if you can, or, get a credit card and use that if you need a credit card, like a Visa card or what have you. Like I said, if you've got children, you say, oh, this person's having a birthday party, and, we're just going to get them a little gift and a card, or we're just going to get them a card, and especially teenagers, because no teenagers only want money. So, you could say, oh, this is for, whatever, so-and-so's friend for their birthday or event. And then, but now it's in your pocket. You could even put it in an envelope with their name on. I mean, you have to cover your tracks if it's like a really bad situation.
Right.
Because what happens is these people, I use the word escalate, they escalate in their violence, they escalate in their trafficking, they escalate in their idealization of what they want to do with you or to you or who they are even. And it's just, it's crazy. Like, I'm still in disbelief over how the other person I was with has turned into, who the other person has turned into. He's proven himself, he has shown himself. Everyone else can see it, and I see it, and even one of my children sees it, but it shocks me because it's so far from my own personal wheelhouse, but I have to accept it and watch my back, no matter what. And, just be aware and alert. I mean, I've even had to tell certain people that if something happens to me, it wasn't by choice. If there's anything found in my car, I didn't put it there. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. So, and I've had to do that. I've had to tell people, my therapist or women distress or, someone in the government, a government job, that this is what's going on. This is what I'm afraid of. This might happen. And please know that these are my intentions in my life. So it wasn't me. And when you do that,
it's tough. That's tough though, because that can be looked at one of two ways, right? One, they could believe you, which is hopefully the way it happens, or they could be like,
yeah, exactly. And that's okay. And it might be, they might teeter about on that line because it is a fine line. But here's what I've come to realize is that your actions and behavior will prove everything to everyone.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, I can't, I personally am volunteering, let's say in 2 days to teach, hygiene and maintenance of their bodies to adults with intellectual and physical disabilities. I'm volunteering to do that. I'm not getting paid. I do it because they asked, and I love people and children, and I consider kids in their 20s or kids to me because my son is in his 20s. And if you're doing all that kind of stuff and you're not quote unquote volunteering or support an organization because you're going to their black tie event where you're standing around with a glass of champagne, there's a difference. If you're the type of person who's putting in the work, and you should put it out there, post it publicly, not for but maybe to help you in your own validation of, what, I am a good person. No matter what that person said to me, I am a good person. And you control that narrative and start when you're in the situation now. I mean, even if it's, donating 3 cans of something for food because, we're recording this on the month of Thanksgiving, but people need food anyway. If you can get a couple of cans of something or, powdered mashed potatoes that don't cost very much at Walmart, because I know the prices of everything because I've had to learn them, put it out there that this is who I am and this is what I do. And that makes you in charge of the narrative of what somebody else might be saying or the support you're going to get or the support you're going to get. I don't do it. You don't do it for ego. You don't do it be like, oh my God, you're a great person. No. Yeah, this is who I am, no matter what happened to me. And it also is a great thing you're doing. It's not about it really
don't go do it to be manipulative though.
Correct. Correct. And that's what I'm
whatever
saying.
it is you're doing, just make sure it's out there and people know that that's your character.
Right. Exactly. And that's your character. And that's what I'm discussing is the character. And, and it also heals you because I went back into my field of healthcare, which I was stepped out of for 20 years. And I had to go back because I had to support myself. And I'll tell you what, helping people heals your heart. It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. And you make connections. You realize everyone's going through something, especially now. I mean, I went back during COVID and I was
Yeah.
exposed like crazy. And, you know, I was fearful and I still put myself out there and I helped as many people as I possibly could. I mean, I stopped a car accidents. I helped people having seizures on the ground. I mean, I did it. And I'll tell you what, every time I did it, it regained the confidence in myself because of all the things that were said to me. Um, I did a lot of physical things also because I realized that I wanted to be in control of my own body. And, you know, to think 5 years ago, this is what was going on, what was happening to my body. I wasn't allowed to be in control of it. But yet, look at how strong it is now. I mean, anyone
Mm-hmm.
who's been through any sort of physical violence,
Right.
when you gain control of strength in your body and you walk with your head high and your shoulders back, yoga, weight training, you know, riding a bike. I mean, I went indoor skydiving. You know, I found one of those Groupons and I went and I was doing it. And everyone, I was talking to everyone after, and they're like, "Oh, it was so much fun. It was such a thrill." And I was there, like I was like crying when I was doing it for that 1 minute. And I was like, I can't believe my body is doing this after all that it's been through,
Mm-hmm.
after everything that was done to it. Look at it. I mean, you know, I had that space between who I am and the awareness of who I am, that Eckhart Tolle space. I always talk about that author where he talks about, you know, your awareness and what you're doing and being aware of it are two different things. It's a very
Right. Yeah.
interesting book.
Yeah.
Um, and anyway, so I recommend people starting to do that. Gain your strength however you can.
Yeah.
You know,
So
you could do crunches, anything on your floor. You don't need anything but you.
right. Yeah. You don't need a gym.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need,
No.
yeah. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
You can go run. You can jog, walk.
Right.
Like, yeah. There's all
Right.
kinds of things. Yeah. That you
Mm-hmm.
can do.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we could just talk forever. I
I
really do.
know. I know. I know. I agree. Let's get coffee.
Um, so my last question then is, where does
Sure.
your inner strength come from? Because you said your family was even
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't think now I think we're all surprised what we can endure
Right.
if we're in a situation, right? But where do you think that
Mm-hmm.
strength comes from?
So, you know, everyone's first answer is faith in God, usually.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say that's true. Um, when I first left, that was true. It is true. Let's be honest. Do we question it sometimes? Absolutely. Um, and you know, right now I'm struggling a little bit because I'm in a weird transition stage in my life. I think
Mm-hmm.
most empty nester moms, single moms are, to be honest. And you know, raising
Yeah.
two special needs kids, I was always on. And now I'm helping my parents, and that's a little crazy, you know, almost an unnatural but natural place. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, listen, if I was in the country and we had three houses, you know, back in the 1700s, it would be different, but it's not. So, but I do want to say that, you know, a really great friend of mine told me and reminded me that it takes over 4,000 people to create one of us. And half of those are men
Right.
and half of those are women.
Yeah.
And that energy, that spirit, that fight, that resilience of what they had to go through, just the women alone, what they
Yeah.
had to go through with history,
Yeah.
that is all in us. And, you know, I have pictures of my grandmothers, my great aunts, my cousins, my all of that. I come from a really long lineage of strong women. And I really feel like those women, those words, and my own mother, um, my sisters, all of that is in me
Mm-hmm.
because I'm the youngest of a lot of siblings and their friends and their significant others. And even my own child, she's tough as nails, that one. And her friends, because the younger generation now, they're strong and they have to be
Mm-hmm.
strong women, especially, or whatever they identify themselves as. They're very strong.
Yeah.
And I think all of that is really what's held me up and kept me going. I now find that the women I become friendly with are also the same. They've been through their stuff. I mean, we attract each other because I walk around with I'm a healed individual. I mean, listen, I'm always working on it,
Mm-hmm.
but this is what I've gone through. You know, it's like we're gladiators in our own right, but you don't see the armor. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that other people can sense that and you attract that.
Yeah.
So between that and continually working on myself and helping other people and talking and being open about it, where for so many years I wasn't open about it. And you're not seeing my face now, but will. I just have to get the legal issues of who I'm dealing with for the most part, because it's not just one person, it's a group, that
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be safe, my children are going to be safe, and that nothing on the legal sense will come after me,
Right.
because that's what I have to worry about and deal
Yeah.
with. And until I get that all situated, you know, I'm not going to always be out there with my real face and my name.
Yeah. Totally
And that's okay,
understandable.
because
That's okay.
the minute, all right, and I've made it to be okay in my own head, but the minute I do, I'm calling everyone that I've done a podcast with. Be like, hi, here I am.
Here she is.
So here she is, because we all have a right to show our face and say our real name.
Absolutely. But I totally understand the
Yeah,
protective
yeah.
position that you're in. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say too, for the listeners, and we're talking about the younger generation being strong and
Mm-hmm.
you, someone like you being so strong, check on your strong friends.
Yes,
Don't
exactly.
just assume they're okay because they're strong because they've gone
Mm-hmm.
through some shit. Check
Mm-hmm.
on them.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's true. I mean, no one did.
Yeah.
I have one girlfriend that she's stronger than I am. She's tough as nails. She has to be for her profession as well.
Mm.
But we're there. I mean, I've known her since we were in elementary school. We're there for each other, like
Yeah.
solid. I call her, we're each other's soulmates,
Yeah.
and we check on one another. And I realize that everyone else is like, oh, you know, she'll be okay.
She'll be
That's what
okay.
they.
She's strong.
She'll be
She's
okay. She's
fine.
got it. She'll be fine. She's having a
Yeah,
bad moment.
she
She'll be
probably
okay.
will be.
Mm-hmm.
She
Yeah.
probably will be,
Yes, for
but check
sure.
on her anyway.
Right.
Ask her
Right.
how
Because
she's doing, what's
yep.
going on now.
Yep.
Like,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And don't ever say to someone, just get over it or move on or
Right.
stop looking in the past. I mean,
Right.
we know it. It's not like we don't know,
That's the
but there's a
toxic,
reason. Right.
toxic
Toxic
positivity. I think I've been
positivity. I
guilty of
know.
that many, many times in the past. And now I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
oh, okay. I
Right.
get it.
Well, it's like Maya Angelou says, it's like when you know better, you do better. So we're now
Right.
more aware of this. Luckily,
Yes.
there are labels to all these things, right? So now we
Yes.
can identify with it. Like we can treat the symptoms, but until we label it and then we're like, oh, these are all the symptoms, like my, you know, like autism.
Mm-hmm.
It's like now we know what we're dealing with, so we can kind of work with that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same idea. And it's not ill-willed. It's I really want the best for you and I don't know what else to say. So just like,
Yeah.
come on, just keep moving forward and come on, don't
Yeah.
look in your past and you know, you can have love and I
Yeah.
love that and it's very kind. But and I'm constantly saying, but you don't understand. You don't get it.
Yeah.
And it's okay that you don't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
And and that's why I'm saying like surround
Yeah.
yourself and you will attract
Try,
people
but
that
maybe
do
we
understand.
should be a little more understanding of those people too, and educate
Right.
them of why that's not the best
Correct. And
course of
that's
action.
right.
Yeah,
I agree with that. And I'm
if they're
starting
willing to
to,
listen.
well, that's a big one. And I'm fine. Right? I'm finding that I am doing that.
Mhm.
And it's easier when it is, well, for me, it's been easier with family members than with,
Yeah,
well, I shouldn't say that. That's not entirely true. Because that's where the whole, well, but I had trauma and I'm fine. Like, okay,
yeah,
you're not quite fine because you're drinking a little bit too much, but you know, all right, God bless
yeah.
you, and I'm here for you if you ever need to talk. That's what I
Right.
say.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and that's another thing people can say is like, I'm here for you and
yeah.
I'll sit with you and I'm not going
And
anywhere and
mean
I'll
it.
just listen
And mean it.
and mean it and
Yeah,
mean it. I
yeah.
agree. And don't talk about me behind my back to
Right.
another friend or a sibling about what I told you,
Right.
even if it's not, you know, done out of malice. I think that those of us that have been through so much of this, there's been so much gaslighting that we're constantly thinking, well, who's talking to who? Who can we trust? They
Yeah,
said this and they said this. So are they talking about me behind my back? And even again, if there's no malice and they are doing that, we have to be told that
yeah.
because, you know, I know for my situation, it was groups of people and everybody had hands in everything. And so, I've had to watch my back. So it's like, you just be honest is what I'm saying to anyone around someone who's been through something.
Because we all need, even as a caregiver, we need advice. We need, to be able to talk to somebody about it. Right. Like, so there's that side of, but then be upfront with the person that you're talking about and be very selective in the person that you're talking to about them.
Yeah.
And maybe don't name names. I'm dealing with this situation. I have a friend who is dealing with this situation without naming a name.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great idea and great advice. Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much for being patient with me and and coming back on to finish the story. And
well, thank you for giving me the platform.
Yes, thank you so much. And good luck with everything. Well, you have a lovely rest of your Sunday afternoon.
Thank you.
And thank you again. I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in to Without Regret, the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe. Leave me a review wherever you get your podcast. That would be really awesome because that's how my podcast is going to get noticed. So that would be a huge help, or share it on your social media would be awesome as well. Thank you so much. This podcast is a Without Regret production, which is produced by me. Artwork is by me. Everything's by me except for that theme song. That's by a guy named Michael Bruguglio. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Without Regret Podcast and on Instagram at without_regret_podcast. Thanks again.